Hello there, fellow Star Wars nerds, and welcome to Unlimited Content, the podcast where two brothers talk about all of Star Wars film and TV in chronological order on the internet as an excuse to hang out more. We're your hosts, Sam and Jack, and this week we're talking about Tales of the Jedi, Episode 2, Justice.
Yes, we are very excited for this first episode. Yep. We've been
I'm
playing
Sam.
this for a while.
Yeah, we have been playing this for a while. I'm Sam. That's Jack. I'm pointing at him, but this is an audio format, so it doesn't really work. Also, we're in different states, so I'm probably not pointing in the right direction either. But
technology's incredible.
Tech knowledge. All right, Jack, tell us about yourself and who we are and what this podcast is about.
I'm Jack. I'm the younger brother. I live in Austin, Texas, currently. I'm a video editor and game developer of sorts. And I like Star Wars a lot, and I like talking about it with my brother, and so we're here. Per Sam's suggestion. This was Sam's idea.
Heck yeah. Hi, I'm Sam. Sam I am. I am the eldest brother. I live in Kansas City, Missouri. We both grew up in Dallas. We grew up together, naturally, because we're brothers. I work for the church in some sort of capacity, and I'll leave it at that. I am a dad, so if there are any dad jokes, I'm sorry. But yeah, that's...
Hey, it's your right. It's your right now that you're a dad.
It is my God-given right to make dad jokes. That's really the whole reason I became a dad, was for the jokes. Because I was making the jokes before, and now I have an excuse to make these jokes. There's something inherent
it's a
about
very expensive way of getting to make jokes.
It is. Kids are expensive. They are. Oh, man. But yeah, no. I have been obsessed with Star Wars for as long as I knew that Star Wars existed. I remember watching the original trilogy on VHS with our dad back in the 90s, in the lead up to The Phantom Menace, which was obviously the first Star Wars thing. Jack, did you see it in theaters? Because I saw it in theaters. I don't remember if you saw it in theaters.
I feel like I might have, but I would have been too young to remember. So sure. I was born 1995, and Phantom Menace came out in 99, so I would have been not even 4 years old yet.
Right.
But we were both. Sam's 3 years older than me. So
yeah. I was prime target audience for Phantom Menace.
You were prime age for that, but I think we both definitely grew up with the prequels in particular. Indeed. I think I was either Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader for Halloween like 3 times.
That sounds about right. I do remember.
Yeah.
There were many lightsaber fight. The Star Wars Legos were always played with at our house.
Yes.
Yeah, I've always Darth Vader's always one of my favorite characters. I was an elementary school boy watching the Star Wars prequels. Darth Vader is going to be, and Darth Maul are going to be the favorites. So, yeah. Yeah, we love Star Wars. Everyone loves Star Wars. And we really just wanted an excuse to hang out more because we live 10 plus hours apart. I have a young family, so I don't get out much. And so a Monday night weekly appointment to talk to my brother about Star Wars sounded like a great idea. And I'm so happy.
And I'm a nerdy introvert, so I don't get out much either, but for different reasons.
There you go. But hey, we want an excuse to talk. Disney's putting out a lot of Star Wars stuff. Almost all of it's good, and we're really happy to talk about it. Most of it's good.
Yeah. Around when did you start watching Clone Wars, Sam?
I started watching Clone Wars at the start of the pandemic. That's
gotcha.
Because it was the start of the pandemic, and Clone Wars Season 7 was about to come out. Mm-hmm. And so I was in lockdown, and I'm like, well, I watched all of 3 other shows, and maybe this Star Wars cartoon something is worth my time. I don't know. It's a cartoon. Can't be that good. Turns out I was wrong. It's so good.
It is so good.
It is so good. And Jack was my guide through watching the Clone Wars for the first time. He introduced the rest of our family to the Clone Wars, with the exception of our mom and sister. They're not the biggest Star Wars fans, but that's okay.
They're into other stuff. They're cool too.
They are cool too. But they probably wouldn't listen to our podcast all that often.
Hi, Mom Gracie. I assume you're listening to the first episode.
Yeah, and probably nothing else, because you don't like... you're welcome to listen to anything you want. We welcome all. All are welcome in this Star Wars place. Great. So...
Yeah, no gatekeeping here.
No gatekeeping. This is we are an inclusive Star Wars podcast. You're allowed to like whatever aspects of the fandom you're allowed to like, as long as you are not a butthole to other Star Wars fans for liking different things.
Yes, whether you're a white straight man living in Kansas City or a white straight man living in Austin, Texas,
Yeah.
you are welcome here.
Two white straight dudes starting a podcast. Wow, we are the most original thing.
Unprecedented.
Yeah, this has never been done before. Love it. Awesome. Jack.
Yeah,
this
I feel like
podcast...
my...
Oh, sorry. You go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to
segue, but you were still on this train.
No, yeah. Good opportunity to segue, except that I'm not done.
So excellent.
No, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my history with Star Wars, I guess, because my definitely growing up with Star Wars. Sam kind of already covered that. We were both definitely very into it as kids, and then I think around the time that, like, when Disney announced they were buying Lucasfilm, and then a little while after that they announced Rebels was coming, and that was going to be like the first new canon thing coming out, basically, at least in terms of like film and television stuff. And so I was excited about that, and I was like, I saw that Clone Wars was a thing, and it was not a series I was ever like super excited to get into. I just think the idea of a war show, like a military thing, was not super appealing to me, maybe. And also I had seen the original, like the Clone Wars movie, the animated movie, when it came out in theaters, and liked it well enough, but I didn't think it was great, and it wasn't like enough to get me intrigued enough. But after the kind of, Disney came onto the scene and started, kind of reinvigorating the series, I was like, you know what, maybe I'll give this a shot. And I found some guides online about, like, these are the best arcs and the best episodes of this series, because it was 6 seasons long at the time, or 5.5 or whatever.
Yeah,
and I was like, that seems like a lot for me to commit to immediately. But of course I ended up loving it, and which is why we're watching everything for the sake of this podcast, watching it all again. But yeah, I love Clone Wars. Some of my favorite episodes of television ever are in Clone Wars, like the season 5 finale with Ahsoka, and Ahsoka as a character is such I think an important and interesting and like pivotal character for the franchise at this point.
Absolutely.
And then Rebels is also honestly one of my favorite shows. Like, I think, despite it's it's got definitely a smaller budget, and it looks maybe less like cinematic and big budget than Clone Wars does, but it's, the storytelling is still there, and the art direction is still there, and it's some amazing character work, and it's great to have like a series in Rebels that's like, as opposed to Clone Wars, which was kind of a series of a bunch of like interconnected but sort of disconnected arcs. Rebels was one continuous story that we got told over 4 seasons, and it was just great. Anyway, I'm going to be done rambling about Star Wars for now, because we got plenty of other opportunities to do that. But yeah, I'm very excited to get started.
Heck yeah! Speaking of getting started, we have to pay our dues. We got to pay the bills here at Unlimited Content, and we have a 100% real sponsor. Jack, yes. Who is the sponsor for the inaugural episode of Unlimited Content?
Well, lucky for you, today's sponsor is General Grievous's Secondhand Saber Emporium. And we mean that literally. Every saber purchase comes with a free hand. Wow.
Thank you, General Grievous. Thank you. Oh, man. All right. See,
I got so many more
real,
of those.
Very authentic. Yes, I love it. I love it. Okay. So, today's episode, we're talking about Tales of the Jedi, Episode 2, Justice. Jack, why are we starting on Episode 2 of something that just came out about 6 months ago, when we're talking about all of Star Wars? Why would we start there?
Because Star Wars is nuts, man.
Well, yes.
Yeah, so this is chronologically the first, as of recording, this is chronologically the first film or television thing in the Star Wars canon. Yeah, so we're starting here, and as we'll definitely see more of later, there are a lot of cases, especially in the animated series, where things are released out of chronological order. Not. I mean, obviously, Star Wars has a long history of releasing things out of chronological order.
Yes, but our introduction into Star Wars was out of chronological order. So
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was out of chronological order, but it was also the first thing in chronological order at the same time.
that's true.
Wow. Anyway.
Look at us.
The more you know. Technology. Anyway, yeah, so Tales of the Jedi Episode 2 is the earliest in the timeline.
Indeed.
But before we get into the discussion of today's episode, Sam, let's talk about what else we've been watching.
What else have we been
reading
watching?
or playing, etc.
Oh man, what else have we been watching, reading, playing, etc.? I mean, obviously, right now I'm watching The Bad Batch and The Mandalorian is also what I'm watching.
Yeah.
Because it is March of 2023, so we're getting 2 episodes of brand new Star Wars content every week, and we will talk about that in about 9 years.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm watching right now. Listening to and reading, I've been reading on an audiobook. It still counts as reading. But it's this book called A People's History of the United States. It is a kind of history from the first colonizers showing up on the shores of what they thought was the West Indies, but was really like the Caribbean and what is now the United States. It's a history from then until about the Clinton administration when the book was published, but from the perspective of the people, not the leaders, not the politicians. Well, obviously they do play an important role, but what is kind of the ground level, what's happening on a ground level in all of that. The opening scene.
It sounds like what they didn't teach you in history class.
Exactly.
Kind of situation.
Yeah, because you hear all about like Christopher Columbus is this great dude and he did all these like big things, but
he wasn't though.
But
he was terrible.
He was not. And it talks about it. Just like the opening scene of the book talks about the just kind of like how all of the indigenous people in what was then called Hispaniola, but was actually I think the island that Haiti is on, like how like 50,000 plus people died in the first couple of years of like the Europeans showing up, and that just kind of set the tone for the rest of the book. So
Fun.
It's yeah, oh yeah. So it feels rather apropos to be reading a book about just kind of like oppressive systems and whatnot while we're talking about a series that kind of got its start with that was a lot of George Lucas's kind of like thought process in going into Star Wars, was talking about the rebels, whether this small oppressed group of people fighting against this big galactic colonizing empire, they're pushing back and rebelling against this oppressive system. So like George Lucas has said in interviews that that is the kinds of stories that he loves to tell, are the stories of the little guy standing up against the big imperial oppressors and all that kind of thing. So it's a really good book. Highly recommend it. It's available on Amazon for like $12 on paperback. It's a long read. The audiobook is like 30-something hours long, so buckle up. But it's good. I love it. I love, like, I like history. I love kind of like the history of peoples and of wars and kind of getting that kind of thing. So it's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, that book's definitely been on my to-read list for a while, because I feel like I would like to know more about American history from the perspective of the oppressed rather than the oppressors, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's definitely important to know. And I feel like I do my best to, educate myself and to learn things, but, I've never had like a kind of sat down and had like a comprehensive education on that kind of thing. So,
right.
Yeah, well, once you're done with it, I would love to hear your final thoughts on it, and
for sure,
I'll probably end up reading myself at some point. But
yeah,
that's cool.
After I read it, and Sarah wants to read it after me. My wife Sarah wants to read it after me, but I would be happy to mail it to you if you want to read it once we're done with it.
Maybe I will, or maybe I'll just buy it myself. Who knows?
Or
maybe the library has it.
It's probably cheaper to order it off Amazon than it would be for me to mail it to you. Honestly,
yeah. Check out your local library, kids.
Yes.
It's great.
Indeed.
Public libraries are one of the best things. They're great.
We love local things. Jack, what have you been reading, watching, playing, listening to?
Let's see. So yeah, this past week I've gotten back into watching Critical Role. I'm on campaign 3. I'm about 8 or 9 episodes behind the current episode. But yeah, it's been really good. Critical Role, for those that don't know, Critical Role is a live tabletop role playing show. So a bunch of voice actors, professional voice actors, have gotten together and started this game of Dungeons and Dragons, where they collaboratively tell a story and they each play a different character. And there's a what's called a dungeon master, who is the person who kind of is the narrator and plays all of the non-player characters and comes up with kind of the world building of the world they get to explore. And this is a very, like, this in particular is a great group of people because they're all great actors already, but they're also great improvisers, and there's some really great world building and interesting, fun characters, and yeah, it's super great. I started watching Critical Role in the pandemic. They're on campaign 3 right now, so each campaign is like over 100 episodes. Each episode being like 3 to 4 hours long, depending.
Good night.
So what I would usually do is I would like watch while I'm eating a meal, and or listen to it like a podcast while doing something else. Yeah, but it's really great. And actually, campaign 1 has been turned into an animated series that you can watch on Amazon.
No way.
Amazon is not a sponsor, by the way. To be clear,
Yes.
I'm not taking Jeff Bezos' money.
Although we would gladly. We would gladly take Jeff Bezos' money.
I mean, if it was all of it, sure.
Yeah.
If it was taken directly from Jeff Bezos, then yes, I would take his money.
Yes.
Anyway,
we also want Jeff Bezos to have no creative control over this. That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, no creative control or control over anything, really.
For sure.
Anyway, so yeah, Critical Role. It's super fun, and I definitely highly recommend it. Yeah, and like I said, the first campaign is they're on season 2 of an animated series that's adapting their first campaign, and they've already announced season 3, and they just recently announced that campaign 2 is also going to be turned into an animated series, which is nuts. Anyway, it's a lot of fun, and that's where I am on it right now. I'm trying to catch up because there's as it stands, it sounds like some of the more recent episodes, there's some real big stuff happening, some big events in the story, and so I need to catch up on that because I'm a little behind. But yeah, I've been enjoying that. Let's see what else. As usual, I'm always playing video games. To find in this show, if you don't already know me, I'm gonna talk about video games a lot because I like video games a lot. Let's see. The last thing I was playing was Elden Ring, which is great, and it's also gigantic, and I'm over 100 hours in, and I'm still not done.
Shoot. That's so large.
Yeah, it's very big, it's very difficult, and so it takes a long time, but it's super, like, it's beautiful and it's rewarding, and yeah, it's great. So I'm in the middle of playing that still. Well, in the middle of. I have no idea how close I am to the end, but I feel like I've seen most of the world, so I'm probably like in probably the last quarter of the game, I would imagine. And also, they just announced a DLC for the game. They're making more of it, which, like, okay. Sure.
There's as much Elden Ring as there is Star Wars at this point. That's crazy.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, so I'm playing that. I started playing the Dead Space remake, which has been super fun. Very, like, it's a survival horror game that takes place on an abandoned, like, derelict space station, and there are these sort of, like, spidery zombie creatures, and
that sounds fun.
Yeah, it is fun. It's scary, but like not like, I wouldn't say it's a horror game straight up. Because like if the thing that freaks me out is horror games where you can't defend yourself and you just have to hide. Those freak me out.
Ooh,
but if you have like a weapon that you can fight back with, then I'm like, okay, I at least have some agency here.
Right.
You know.
So is this a one that you have a weapon? Or
yes.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah. So the premise is that you're basically like an engineer. You're like a repairman essentially that has shown up on this station to find that it is overrun with monsters, and most of the crew are dead, and the power is all turned off, and so you have to go through the station and basically repair things. And so a lot of your weapons that you have are actually repair tools that you are like repurposing as weapons. So it's a pretty cool idea.
Nice.
Yeah, but that's been really cool. And then I'm about to start replaying Jedi Fallen Order because the sequel comes out in April, so that's coming up pretty soon. I just want to go through the story one more time to kind of refresh myself on those characters and stuff. Great game, definitely recommend it if you're into anything that's like it's kind of a cross. It's got elements of Uncharted and a little bit of kind of Dark Souls-y combat and some like exploration and puzzles that you might find in like a Metroidvania or a Zelda game maybe. So it's got a lot. It's got a lot going for it. It's a great action adventure game, I'd say.
That sounds...
and it feels very Star Wars, which I think is the best part about it. Is it feels like you're in the Star Wars universe. They really nailed the tone, and the music is great, and yeah. So
yeah,
highly recommended that.
Want to play Jedi Fallen Order so bad, but they don't. It's not on Switch, and
it's not.
I'm not like a big gamer. I just kind of like gaming is kind of like what I do when I want to shut off my brain for the evening or just play some fun puzzles. So I'm a big Zelda gamer. So like Breath of the Wild is like I'm on my like third or fourth playthrough of Breath of the Wild right now.
Yeah, I heard that. I played Breath of the Wild twice, but man, playthrough 3. That is
But see, here's the thing. I just like I don't want to. I really want to play Jedi Fallen Order, but like I don't want to buy another console just to play it.
Oh yeah, no, understandable.
Because I have a Switch and a MacBook, and I can't play it on either of those things.
Yeah.
I am sad. So I have to resort to people playing through on YouTube to get the story, because people do that, and it's cool. But I think whenever we get to that, because it takes place around the same time as like Obi-Wan.
Yeah,
right?
it's around the same time as Kenobi, I think, is when it takes place.
Yeah. So I think, Jack, you're going to have to take the lead on that episode and just tell us like what happened in the video game, and we're going to have to...
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot that happens that's like relevant to the rest of the kind of the Star Wars, like the main characters of the Star Wars universe or anything, but like, but it's an interesting story.
Jack, we're going to even be watching the Jar Jar episodes of Clone Wars. It doesn't matter if it has anything to do with the overall.
What are you talking about? Jar Jar Binks is the protagonist of the Star Wars saga. What are you talking about?
My mistake. I'm sorry. Forgive me,
Get
Jar Jar
together.
Binks.
Fake Star Wars fan right here.
Hey, we're not gatekeeping here on this podcast, Jack. No gatekeeping.
Unless
even
it's
when it comes to Jar Jar.
gatekeep.
Dang it. Okay. Fair enough. All right. Cool. Is there anything new and upcoming in the world of Star Wars? Speaking of Star Wars, I know we're in the middle of Mandalorian Season 3.
Yes.
And Bad Batch is wrapping up soon. We got a couple weeks of Bad Batch
Both of
left.
which are great so far, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
We're only 2 episodes into Mandalorian. I thought the first one was fine. The second one, some really cool stuff happens. We'll get to that again in 9 years whenever we're on that episode. But definitely enjoying that. And then Bad Batch continues to be delightful. Like this past episode was was excellent.
It was a very Crosshair centric episode, and I love Crosshair. I think he's one of the more interesting characters getting new stuff in Star Wars right now. But other than that, I think we just got news that I think Ahsoka is going to be coming out in the fall or late summer.
Cool.
Which I think I read that on Twitter. That could just be not accurate. It could be accurate. I think it's accurate. We're getting Ahsoka. I know we're getting it this year, but I think it's the end of the summer. We're getting Ahsoka. Which is...
I can't wait for us to get the first like actual footage from the show, like a trailer. I want to see Ezra. I want to know if Thrawn's going to be in it. I want to...
Yes. I want to know everything.
I want my Rebels sequel series. That's what I want it to be.
And I feel like we should be getting some trailer footage in April when Star Wars Celebration Europe happens.
Yes, that's definitely the next big Star Wars thing after what's currently going on. Yeah.
Yes.
Star Wars Celebration. That'll be exciting, and maybe we'll have like some special content where we talk about that stuff, react to some of the panels and announcements and whatnot.
For sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else before we get into our main segment for the day, Mr. Jack?
I think I'm ready to move on. So let's talk about some Star Wars.
Let's talk about some Star Wars. All right, today's episode, Tales of the Jedi, Episode 2, titled Justice.
Justice!
Okay. Justice.
I like that in our script you've added an exclamation point at the end of Justice.
I did?
I appreciate that.
I did. Look at me go. Wow. I was just
That's some
excited.
personality.
I'm just excited. I'm
excited too. I get it.
I love getting to talk about Star Wars. I don't get to geek out enough. This is another reason why I have this podcast, is because I don't have anybody to talk about this. Because my wife loves Star Wars. She'll watch Mandalorian with me. She won't watch like the animated stuff with me, although she has watched it in the background and like knows, like, because I've watched Rebels a couple times through, and she knows the kind of the basic, like, what happens there, and she jumps in. Yeah. She wants to come in at some point and just kind of like as an unexpert about Star Wars, to share her opinions on things. But
yes, we're going to have unexpert segments. We're going to have some guests to get an outsider's perspective on Star Wars.
Yep. So anyway, what was I talking about? Where are we?
We were talking about justice! Exclamation point!
Exclamation point! I'm excited. Yes, that was a long aside to say I'm so excited about this.
I can tell.
I'm 30 years old, but I'm like a kid in a candy shop on doing this thing. Okay, so the episode opens with Jedi Master Dooku. Is he Count Dooku, or is he Jedi Master Dooku?
I think he must always be he's probably always been a Count. Right, because that's something you like inherit, right? So he probably was a Count.
Yeah, I guess it is a familial royalty title. So Count Dooku.
I don't think we don't ever like get a. I don't think they ever address him by name. I think he just like Qui-Gon calls him Master, and that's all we hear of him in this episode.
So Master Dooku, we'll call him Master Dooku for this episode. Master Dooku and Padawan Qui-Gon Jinn, which I love it.
Little baby Qui-Gon.
Little baby Qui-Gon, voiced by the son of Liam Neeson. Fun fact.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah. They are flying in on their big old red ship, which looks just like the one that Ahsoka flies at the end of Rebels. So I wonder if... I don't know if it's just like... they both.
She stole it from Dooku.
Either she stole it from Dooku, or it's just like... That's just like it's the Toyota Camry of the Star Wars universe. Like, everybody has one of these.
Man, if that's the Toyota Camry of the Star Wars universe, that's a nice looking Camry.
Well, here's the thing: it's going on from like a couple decades before Phantom Menace, is when we first see it, and then the next time I see that I remember is at the end of Rebels when Ahsoka picks up Sabine at the kind of the end of Rebels, which is at the end of the original trilogy. So that's like a 50-year span that this thing is still going. So that's why I think this ship is the Toyota Camry of the Star Wars universe.
It's very repairable.
It's repairable, reliable, consistently gets 300,000+ miles on this thing, but like light years, I don't know. Anyway, so they fly in onto this muddy planet, and they land in this muddy, rundown village. We don't get a name for this planet. We don't get a name for the village or a name for the people or the center. We don't really get it. There's a lot of just people being addressed by titles, no names, just titles. So they land in this muddy, rundown village, and you get a lot of like Western vibes when like the new sheriff comes into town, and like people are like peeking through doors, closing doors, turning off lights, and they're walking just down the main drag. Star Wars really getting to their roots of being a space Western.
Yes, definitely.
And the civilians, they do that, and Master Dooku and Padawan Qui-Gon Jinn walk into a saloon, and
very Western.
Very Western. Yeah. And Dooku just says, "Where is he?" or something along those lines. Like, where? What does he say? He says, like, "Where is he?"
Where's the senator's son?
Where's the senator's son? Yeah. So again, no names, just titles. Where's the senator's son? And they met with like they just met with silence. And
they're like, "Yeah, wouldn't you like to know?"
Yeah.
But somebody says like, "Why should we tell you?"
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then after a minute of talking, it becomes apparent that everybody's in on it. That literally everybody here is the kidnappers in this scenario.
Right, and Dooku basically says, "I'm not messing around." He lays his lightsaber down on the table, just like someone would lay like their big old 6-shooter down on the table.
Yes.
It's
Let me make my intentions clear.
Yes. Yeah. I'm not asking. Tell me where he is. And I love it. In this episode, you see just kind of like the innocence and the purity of Qui-Gon Jinn really shine through, and the kind of more grizzled, I'm tired of doing things the way that I'm told to do, Count Dooku. You kind of see like
starting to get fed up with the way.
Yeah, you see the jadedness starting to seep through into Count Dooku's countenance, and the
that was good. That was dad joke. Dad joke counter number 1.
Oh man, this is gonna be a long podcast. Yeah, and then the purity and the innocence, and just like the inherent belief that people are good in Qui-Gon Jinn really starts to shine through.
Yeah, there's a moment in this scene where like, where basically they find out that the senator for this planet is pretty terrible. He's corrupt and he's not taking care of his people, and that's why they're in such dire straits. And Qui-Gon is just like, with all due respect, why don't you just vote him out and vote for a new senator? And they're like, haha, if only it were that easy.
Yeah.
So we get like not only like the kind of the sort of idealism and innocence of Qui-Gon, but also like his, the fact that he's clearly young enough that he hasn't been exposed to kind of the complexities of the world, and the way that, things are often more complicated and difficult to solve than they would first appear.
For sure. Yeah, and so the people, once, I think a big part of it was Qui-Gon's just wanting these people to get just the simple justice that they deserve, was what led to kind of like the next step in the episode, where the people lead Dooku and Qui-Gon to the senator's son, who's held up in a barn, being guarded by this giant droid with headlights for eyes.
2-ton.
2-ton. Great name for a droid. Great name for a droid.
I love him.
Yep. And the senator's son also kind of like showing he's kind of like, he and Qui-Gon are kind of playing the same, like two sides of the same coin in this episode, where Qui-Gon has just kind of like this innocent outsider's perspective of like, this isn't right, we need to like do what we can for these people. And the senator's son, who's been like, he's been isolated from this as well, and he's also like, yeah, no, we need to do something about this. So the senator's son is being held hostage by the people of this town, to basically, they're like, we're going to hold him hostage until you make our lives better, because
until you do your job.
You do your job. Yeah. And at that point, the senator shows up, and the people,
bunch of guards
with a bunch of guards with guns, and they're all wearing their bright shiny armor, and their faces are all hidden, and you just kind of have this like this nameless, faceless, very well moneyed, oppressive force showing up to these very human, very sad, very raw, very vulnerable townspeople. And you have these two Jedi who are going to defend them. And the Jedi at that point kind of decide like there's just like there's an old Western shootout. Is kind of like what happens next.
With laser swords.
With laser swords, yes. It's Star Wars. Their lightsabers are almost always involved. But
thankfully.
Yeah, so thankfully, indeed. So the senator shows up, guns ablazing, and Dooku, the shootout ensues, and most of the people, most of the townspeople are shot down. Nothing's confirmed like somebody dies or this, that, but there's a lot of people with gunshot wounds to the shoulder or to the arm, and they're down for the count. And at the end of it, it is basically all the senator's men and the two Jedi are all that remain. And there's kind of like a standoff. And the senator kind of makes his demands. Qui-Gon appeals for the people, like, how can you let these people be like this? And Dooku is basically done.
Dooku has had enough.
Dooku is done with negotiations, and he's going to get his way. And Dooku begins to force choke the senator. At which point,
first canonical force choke that we've seen.
It is the first canonical force choke, and it's by a Jedi Master who, oops, whoops, that happened. And so Dooku force chokes the senator, but Qui-Gon runs back into the barn and releases the senator's son and kind of like diffuses the tension. Like, here's your kid, like, stop fighting. Like, he just, like, breaks up the fight.
Yeah, he goes in and says to the senator's son, go save your father. And he's like, what? And he's like, no, just no time to explain, just go.
Yeah.
And so he runs out there and sees Dooku choking his dad. He's like, no, stop. What the? That's my dad.
Yeah. And the episode it ends pretty quickly after that, where the senator gets back in the car, won't make eye contact with anybody. The senator's son is really kind of the leader and promising the people of the town that, like, I'm going to make this right. He gets back and he maintains eye contact with the people of the town while the senator is just embarrassed. He just had his butt handed to him. And all of his, like, failures as a politician were just kind of shoved right in his face, and there was no way he could ignore those things. And
in front of his son, too.
And in front of his son, too. And his son
saw what he had done. Yeah.
Yeah, and his son is the one who's like, I'm going to hold my dad to account, which is crazy. Yeah, and then it kind of just ends with a conversation between Dooku and Qui-Gon, where Dooku acknowledges the wisdom of Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon is kind of like, was kind of taken aback, but still very innocent with all that was going on.
He's very humble about it. He's like, well, I learned it from you. Like, all thanks to your teaching, master. Yeah. Something I liked at the end of and they walk away, and that's the end of the episode.
Yes.
Something I like about the end of the episode is that there's a couple shots after the senator's son is like, we're going to fix this, and then they go off. Qui-Gon kind of looks around the town for a second and sees, people are starting to kind of rebuild. They're like, picking their stuff back up and kind of starting to repair things. And one thing I noticed was that there was at least one of the senator's soldiers was, like, tending to the wounds of one of the injured townspeople.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool detail because it's like it hints towards the fact that, like, these soldiers do, in theory, they do have a heart, and that even they were able to kind of see things a little differently, and it gives some hope to the idea that maybe there actually would be some lasting change in this.
For sure. Yeah, and to kind of add on to that, I did notice at the end of the episode that was the brightest that the scene had been. Since, like, it was dark and dingy the entire episode, and then the sun was starting to come out at the end of the episode. So it kind of ended on a hopeful note, but also just like Count Dooku is a bad guy? ? Like,
this is very clearly like telegraphing kind of the fall of Dooku, because we don't really, at least in the films and in the TV so far, we hadn't really been able to see anything about Dooku's past. We just knew that he was a Jedi that had been trained by Yoda, I think, and then eventually he fell to the dark side and became a Sith Lord, and that's kind of all we knew about him. We knew that he was Qui-Gon's master.
Right.
We knew that.
Yep.
But this is, I think this arc that they're telling in Tales of the Jedi is definitely to give us some more background on, like, on Dooku as a character, and to kind of show us the trajectory of his fall and kind of how that happened.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I think that's kind of what the animated series in general, like the Clone Wars and Tales of the Jedi, do a really good job of, is fleshing out these characters' backstories and their motivations and how they end up where they do. I thought this was a good episode.
Yeah, I did too. One of the things I love about Star Wars TV is just that the whole philosophy behind it is just more Star Wars is better Star Wars. And, like, the more Star Wars you have, the more context you have, the better it makes everything. It's kind of like a rising tide raises all ships. That's why Clone Wars, like, was so successful, is because it just added so much depth and context to the prequels, and then ultimately the sequels and the original trilogy. Same thing with Rebels, and that's also what we're getting with Mandalorian and Andor and all that. Like, more Star Wars makes Star Wars better. So this definitely adds. This episode definitely, I think, adds a lot of depth to Count Dooku's character. Just to kind of see that he is, like, really just a man who wants to do what is right, and wants to, like, and kind of, like, sees through the the bureaucracy and the I don't know, just he wants to cut through the red tape and just get to like I see a problem, I want to be able to fix it, and I don't want to like have to abide by someone else's rules to fix a situation in the moment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that kind of like, I think for Qui-Gon, this episode kind of like helps. It kind of sheds light on his role in episode 1, in the Phantom Menace of like, I don't know, just like he sees the best in people, and it's a big reason why he took on Anakin as a Padawan, because like against the recommendation of the Jedi Council, because he wanted, like, he could see the good, he could see the potential in these people.
Yeah, exactly. I think this episode, I agree, and I think that this episode does a good job of showing us both like the kind of the fact that the Qui-Gon from early on had a lot of wisdom to him, a lot of like compassion, but also we get to see kind of like, Qui-Gon is, he was great, and he was a great Jedi and a great person by all accounts, but he also, he didn't always follow the rules. He was known for being kind of a, going off on his own and doing his own thing sometimes, and not necessarily listening to the council, like you said.
Sure.
And I think this episode gives us a little bit of insight into maybe why that is. Like he got it from Dooku a little bit. Like he from an early age, relatively, got to see kind of, instances where, the systems that are in place aren't serving the people that they're supposed to in the way that they're supposed to, and that, by Dooku's example, learned that sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands.
Right.
Luckily, Qui-Gon does it in a way generally where, like, he doesn't cause more destruction, he doesn't give in to hate, but he does recognize that sometimes, unjust laws need to be broken, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this episode, I feel like, this is the first thing we're watching for the podcast, and it's because it's the first thing chronologically. And so obviously this isn't, it's not the first thing that anybody would actually watch if they were getting into Star Wars for the first time. Like, I wouldn't recommend this as the first episode.
Exactly.
But honestly, like, thematically, I think it works really well for a first episode, because I feel like especially the prequels, a lot of the themes of the prequels and the stories that we get to see in the prequels and in the Clone Wars are about systems that are broken and not serving the people that they're supposed to. Mm-hmm. And kind of the way that, people begin to realize that and see through that, in the way that, that leads to, the downfall of the Republic and of the Jedi Order, and the ways in which, I think a lot of the Star Wars prequel era is about corruption and how do we respond to it? Do we respond to it by, falling into evil ways, like falling to the dark side like Dooku did, or do we respond to it by embracing hope and trying our best to help people the right way? I think this is so thematically, I feel like this episode really lined up with the rest of the prequels in general. I think it was a good place to start ultimately.
Yeah, I also think it's so very quintessentially Star Wars, because it is literally a Western in space, and that
definitely.
Yeah, and that was like one of George Lucas's like his main driving forces in how he wanted Star Wars to look and feel is a space Western, and this had
space. It's part space Western, part samurai film, part like World War II film. Yeah,
right. And I feel like this had a lot of those elements in this episode. It just felt very Western, felt very Star Wars. It's such a classic Star Wars thing, even though it's only been out like 5-6 months. It's very, very Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah. This episode written by Dave Filoni. That shows.
Our Lord and Savior, Dave Filoni.
Yes. Thank you, Sir Filoni.
Indeed. Okay, Jack, what's your favorite part of the episode?
My favorite part. Man, that's tough. I mean, I feel like probably just the moment when it's clear that, like, Dooku has decided, no, we're defending these people. Like, the senator shows up and he's like, no, I've decided to take a stand for these people. I've had enough of this, and this isn't right. Because again, it shows like so much of the people who fall to the dark side from the Jedi are usually they're not necessarily like inherently evil or selfish. They see the corruption and they see the ways in which our systems are broken, and they decide to do things their own way, and sometimes that leads them off to the wrong path. But like we kind of see the Dooku, he goes a little far at one point, obviously, with the Force choking and everything. But like, we do get to see Dooku being a hero in this episode, essentially. So, I thought that was a cool moment, definitely.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I don't know if I had like one favorite moment in particular, but just the Western vibe of this whole episode.
Oh yeah,
it just I loved it, and I think if I had to pick one, it'd be the sequence from them walking down the main drag into the saloon and Dooku putting his lightsaber on the table. It just like very
a lot of
very
mostly
cool, very
wordless
Western
communication.
Yeah,
very good.
Oh yeah,
I was waiting for it to go,
yeah,
spaghetti Western style.
Yes. Yes. Okay, Jack, who, in your opinion, is the MVP of this episode?
Okay, well, I have two answers for this one.
Okay.
Okay, so number one, I feel like in terms of the person who did the most good and was kind of the most impressive and brave, honestly, was the senator's son, who we never get a name for. Sure. But I thought he was like, the fact that he was kidnapped by these people, and yet he still had the empathy to be like, actually, no, I get it. I get why you did this. I don't blame you. Yeah. And then he goes and stands up to his dad, and he's like, I'm going to fix this for you. He's an example of like the kinds of characters, the kinds of people that you would hope would populate the galaxy. For sure. And definitely the kind of people that, we end up seeing in the heroes of later stories in Star Wars. And we just got to see, one moment where this kid who didn't really know any better until now decides to make a change, and I think he was the MVP in terms of like getting the most important stuff done and being he was ultimately kind of the hero of the episode, I thought. Sure. My other MVP, just because I like him, is Two-Ton. I like friendly droids. I like big silly looking robots, and he's a big old pancake with flashlights for eyes and two chicken legs, and he walks around. He's friendly, and he keeps the senator's son company, and he lifts up a thing at the end. And I'm like, every time I saw him, I was like, yes, Two-Ton. Yes, great.
Anytime Star Wars just does the big goofy strong droid,
yes,
it does it for me. I love it.
And speaking of droids, there was at the beginning of the episode we saw a droid that was like, it looked kind of like an astromech, except it had two long, like, flamingo legs, and it, like, falls over. And I was like, this is great.
I didn't notice the astromech, but I did notice it was, like, that definitely kind of set the tone for the episode of, like, this is, like, this droid is doing work on reserve power, and, like, there's no way. Yeah. Like, it kind of, like, helps set the vibe of, like, things are not going well. Things are not going well. Everyone is, like, running on low power mode, less than 20% battery, like... We are not doing well. But then we get Two-Ton with his just like high beams for eyes.
Hey, everybody.
I love Two-Ton.
Your MVP, Sam.
My MVP, Qui-Gon. It's got to be Qui-Gon.
Good. Yeah.
I think I almost walked it back when you said the senator's son, because the senator's son was kind of like did everything Qui-Gon did, but more impressive because he's not a Jedi and he has to stand up to his dad.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lightsaber or force powers. He was just like, nope, I'm going to do something about this anyway. Yeah. Right.
But I think just the character development we see, not development, just like the fleshing out of the character of Qui-Gon, and seeing just the innocence he has whilst being wise and strong in the Force, being a good warrior, and always. He never once thought about himself or his own prestige or his seeking out power or anything. He very much was just like 100% selfless the entire episode. Which is not to say that any of Qui-Gon, I mean not Qui-Gon, Count Dooku, who wasn't necessarily acting selfishly, he just wasn't acting nicely
rationally
either. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I really liked Qui-Gon in this episode.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
And I agree that Qui-Gon's great in general, and I think in terms of just like, who is like the best Jedi, Qui-Gon has to be up there in contention, just because of like how even during an era of where the Jedi were largely corrupt or inept or both.
Yes.
Qui-Gon, held out hope and did things the way he knew to be right, even if it wasn't the popular or accepted way of doing things.
Right.
And in this episode, we get to see, even from a fairly early age, we get to see him being selfless and wise, and pulling his master back from potentially making a mistake that you can't take back. So
for sure.
Great choice, definitely.
Yep. All right. 3 things we always want to keep track of. We're going to keep a running total throughout all of Star Wars canon. We don't have any additions to it this week, but we want to keep a main character kill count. How many people do the main characters in Star Wars kill? We have no confirmed kills in this episode, so it remains at 0. No limbs lost, no appendages removed.
That's a common theme in Star Wars. So
indeed,
we'll get to. I'm sure that number will go up pretty quick. But,
yeah. Apologies to our sponsors on that one, that we have no limbs lost on this episode.
Sorry, Grievous.
Sorry, General Grievous. And then lastly, my favorite, which I think we'll only really see in the movies, is the Wilhelm scream count.
Yes.
Jack, you are a little more well versed on the history of the Wilhelm scream. Do you want to share with our audience if not familiar with what the Wilhelm scream is, or where it came from, or why it's a favorite of the Star Wars community?
Sure. Yeah. So the Wilhelm scream is this. I'm gonna play it so that you know what the Wilhelm scream is.
Yay, movie magic.
Movie magic. Audio magic.
Podcast magic.
Yeah, so the Wilhelm scream, this, is a sound effect that has been in every Star Wars movie. And it's a silly scream sound. It's from a movie. It's called the Wilhelm scream because it's from a movie where a character named Wilhelm does that scream. That's what it's from, and it's like a Western, I think, and he falls off his horse.
Oh.
So legendary sound designer Ben Burtt, who worked on the original Star Wars and every Star Wars movie since, he, as kind of an inside joke for himself, and for Star Wars fans eventually, over time, as people noticed it, basically decided to use the sound effect in every Star Wars movie. So it's not just in Star Wars movies anymore. It's been in, I think, Indiana Jones movies and some other stuff too. But it's just kind of like an audio in joke, like a running gag almost for Star Wars. And it's delightful. And I feel like there must be some instance where it's in the animated series at some point. I can't think of any specific examples, but
I would be shocked if it wasn't in Clone Wars somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So keep your ears open for the Wilhelm scream.
Keep your ears peeled.
Yes. Okay, Jack. That kind of does it. Any closing thoughts? Anything you want to say to the audience before we sign off?
I'm excited. I'm excited to keep doing this podcast. This is fun.
This is so much fun.
Thank you for listening, anybody who's listening, and bear with us as we get our bearings and figure out how to how to banter better and how to maybe make our podcast sound better. I don't know how this is going to sound because this is our first time making it. Hopefully with time we'll get better at it and things go more smoothly. And if you want, you can watch along. Speaking of which, the way that we got our list of chronological order things is by going to Wikipedia, the Star Wars wiki. So if you just Google list of Star Wars media in chronological order, there's a Wikipedia article where you can view everything in chronological order, and it'll tell you what year it takes place in, and it's a great resource, and you can also filter it by like so basically I went in there and filtered it to just show the movies and TV shows, because it also shows the books and the video games and other media. Yeah, so if you want to follow along, feel free to use that as a resource, or you can just watch whatever we tell you the next thing is at the end of each episode.
The next thing for next episode is Tales of the Jedi Episode 3, titled Choices. So it's the immediate next episode from this one. Awesome, Jack. Cool. This was good.
We did it.
We did it. This has been Sam and Jack on Unlimited Content, a Star Wars podcast where he and I talk about Star Wars on the internet as an excuse to hang out more. Thank you for listening.
That is the full title.
That is the full title.
Yeah, it's Unlimited Content, all of that.
Yes,
so
colon
is the
all
name
of that.
Of the podcast.
Quotes. Jackboard. Great. All right. We love you. May the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you all.
And that's it. Signing off in 3, 2.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. Love you all.
1. Goodbye.
All right, cut the chatter. Roger, Roger.